Welcome to another edition of the Lost and Foundry Show. We're going to jump right into it. I've got Micah with us today. We're going to talk about 2024 first before we get to 2023 and all the good stuff that happened. But every year we do a theme. Now, tell me a little bit about why you do a theme every year at the Foundry.
Yeah. So I kind of inherited the theme idea, right? Pastor Bill, for a dozen years before me, so at least almost 25 years now, we've had a theme that was really a central focal point for us as an organization. It's kind of the bullseye for us in a 12-month window, something that we can really lock in together. And I love it because typically last year's theme was the year to overcome, right? And so the idea there was that there were organizationally some things that we knew we were trying to overcome. But also think about how personal that message is for the individuals that are walking through our doors. Man, that's what they're looking for, an opportunity to overcome. So the great thing about the way our themes are designed is they're collective for the whole ministry, but also personal on an individual level. So 2024, right? So the year of His goodness is really the theme for this year. And what I love about Nahum chapter 1, verse 7, which, Nahum, where's it at even, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the Old Testament prophet shares this prophecy in the midst of turmoil for the people of Nineveh. And he says, hey, time out. The Lord is good. He is a refuge in times of trouble, and He draws near to those who are close to Him. So kind of three moving parts to that short verse that kind of locks us in for the theme of the year of His goodness, because you got to think about the people that walk through our door. When they walk in, they're not really looking at this concept of God is good, right? They're in the midst of chaos. That's why they're here, men and women. And so when they walk through the doors and they see that we're locked in and focused on this idea of the attribute of God as being He's good. So many of them have this back history that God has not been good in their perspective, simply because their relationship with God has been latched or linked to a bad experience. Maybe it's a church experience, a place represented God to them, or someone that was a Christian that was not a healthy environment for them, that wronged them in some way. And so to come into it and think that God is good really kind of changes the dynamic for someone, which is really why that's the focus of our theme this year. As an organization, we want that to be the banner that we're waving. Hey, God is the central part of what we do here. God's goodness is rich among us, but even on the personal level as well.
It's kind of interesting because you add a theme to kind of mix it up where, we go through these cycles where we're teaching curriculum and, you do it once and it's fresh, and you do it twice and you're like, well, I've done this before. Once you get to the seventh or eighth time, it can get a little stale. So adding that little bit of variance every year can be really valuable for the staff as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you even think about the second part of that verse, right? That the Lord is our refuge in times of trouble. Not just the men and women that we serve are going through stuff. Think about the people that are serving them, right? Our staff. Almost 100, well, just over 100 employees at the Foundry. And man, we're just like everybody else. We all got stuff to deal with. We got garbage. We got turmoil that we're living in. So for us collectively as a ministry to say, all right, we're going to recognize God's goodness. We're going to put Him in the place that only He deserves. But we're also going to stand firm on the idea that He is our refuge. And I love the image that we get in the Old Testament about refuge. It's like a cave, right? This place of protection from the storms of life. And so to think about God in that context, that He is a refuge for us, even in the middle. And we're going to have turmoil, right? Everybody's going to have turmoil. It goes back to last year's theme. You're going to have troubles, but take heart. I've overcome the world. I've overcome the troubles. So to have this refuge in this safe place is about the individual benefit of recognizing that relationship and that attribute of God, but it's also collective for us as a ministry.
Yeah. So this theme, And sometimes people are a little bit worried when you're about to tell the theme because it can be prescriptive a little bit. Where what do you mean it's the year to overcome, Micah? Because I don't have anything to overcome right now. Are you telling me there's something coming? And so the year of His goodness. I think we're all a little bit relieved that His goodness.
That's right.
We don't have to worry.
You can even go back to the year of kindness.
Yeah.
People were more mean during that year than they were kind, right? I mean, it's like the adverse kind of takes place sometimes. The year of healing felt like everybody got sick that year. So you had all these different things. So you're exactly right. We kind of step into it going, all right, what's the flip side of the theme? Because that's going to be what comes against us, right?
And some of it's just, we have these blinders in our lives and we hyper focus on things.
Sure.
So it's good to have something in our lives that help us shift that focus and maybe, there's things in our life that we haven't been looking at, and to take a moment and say, sometimes I forget that God is a good God, right? And that we need His goodness in our lives, and we need grace, and we need the mercy that only God can give. So to turn our focus and say, that's what, I'm going to focus on this year can be very helpful. We've had a bunch of years like that with His kindness was a good one. Mm-hmm. I do think that there was a huge increase in the way that participants treated each other and staff treated each other, and it was kind of incredible.
Absolutely
that year.
Was.
So my encouragement to you watching is that the theme isn't just for staff and participants; it's a theme for the Foundry family. So the year of His goodness, we're going to be bringing you content every month about His goodness and what that means for you, verses that will help you refocus on what it means to have a relationship with God and what it means to take that goodness He gives to you and maybe turn it on to someone else, right? So super excited for the theme. I've popped it up on the screen so everybody can look at it. And for some reason, 2 years in a row, we've had hearts as a theme.
That's right.
So probably won't have it next year, but another heart this year. And I'll try to add the wallpaper somewhere. So if you want to add it to your desktop or something, you can do that as well. But 2024 is going to be great. We have a lot of good things planned. We're vision casting and thinking about what the future may hold. One of my lights went out.
Indeed.
It just got dramatic. Let's take a moment, let's take a break, and let's celebrate what we did in 2023.
Amazing year.
We're going to do more this year. We did more last year than we did the year before, and we want to celebrate that. So the first number that I would like us to talk about, we'll save the big numbers for last, okay? But this is an actually big number, and it's the number of meals we served in 2024. So that number is 232,000 meals.
It's a lot of food to be cooked.
It's hard to imagine that many meals being cooked.
Yeah.
It's hard to think about how many trucks of food had to be carried just for that to happen.
Yeah, that's a lot of food. When you think about 232,000 meals, when the men and women that come into our doors fill out an intake questionnaire, almost like a survey, and they talk about how so many of them have been homeless and therefore have been malnourished because they just haven't, that hasn't been a focus for them. To be able to walk into a place and to know that I'm going to eat 3 good meals every single day. We joke internally that you're going to gain the Foundry 40 while you're here with us. But man, some of the men and women that we serve needed to gain 40 pounds. They were just an unhealthy place in life. Yeah. And so to be able to come in, to know that somebody is, first of all, preparing a meal for you, but they're preparing it with love. There's a training and teaching environment in our kitchen area that happens with our food service staff. So it's really more than just about 232,000 meals. It's about 232,000 plates of food that were served with the right heart, right spirit, served with love, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, let's talk about love in February. But beyond that, man, it was nourishment for the body because we know that our approach to recovery is body, soul, and spirit. Yeah. And so that's food for the soul and food for the body.
Yeah. And not to mention that as everybody has felt at home, food prices just keep creeping up. And so we feel that here too. So it's a huge celebration to us that we've kept up and even increased the number of meals we've served over the year. So lots of food, lots of bacon and biscuits, and not so much of the bacon because it's really the prices have gone up. But okay, so along hand in hand with that is the nights of shelter. So when a participant stays here, that's the nights where the I don't know what percentages, but the majority of people are considered homeless when they come into the Foundry at some level, or they've been couch surfing, or maybe, living on the streets. And so when they come here, it's a night of shelter they may not have had if they hadn't come here. And for us, that looks like 77,000 nights of shelter for 2023. And that's a lot of people safe in a bed. Don't have to worry about the elements. Don't worry about where the next one's coming from.
You used the right word. It's a place of safety, right? Unless you've been without, you probably can't appreciate the fact of what it's like to have a safe place to lay your head at night. I can't relate to that in the same way. I've thankfully never been homeless, but I can appreciate the fact of what it's like to lay down in a bed at night, to actually sleep, not worrying about what's happening around you. And I think that 77,000 number for us is just that. It's a place, it's a number of safety, right? That you're going to have a warm bed. In the summer, you're going to have a place that's cool, right? You're going to have a place that you don't have to worry about things, and you're going to be able to rest. And rest is good for the body and for the soul as well.
Yeah. And like you said, this isn't a number we're going to talk about, but all the costs associated with heating and air, HVAC, or lighting. And so there's an enormous amount, it's not just buying a mattress and having a room for that mattress to go into. It's about all the other creature comforts, you might say, that come with living a normal life.
Right.
So it's a huge accomplishment to get there.
And we use a word internally a lot, that we want to give a dignified place for our participants to sleep. It's not the Taj Mahal, right? And it's not, but it's also it's not sleeping on the streets. It's a nice bed, a comfortable bed, a place that is safe. It does cost a lot of money to provide those services, but that's kind of part of why we do what we do.
Yeah, there's a great way actually that you can be involved with this. If you go to our volunteer page at foundryministries.com/serve, you can see lots of opportunities. One of those opportunities is actually to have put together a welcome basket for the men and women, or you can go to the Amazon page. And one of the things we try to do is we have to, when a new participant comes, they have toiletries and all the stuff they need, but some of that is having fresh sheets, a new pillow, and you can provide all of that through that Amazon link page.
Absolutely.
So nights of shelter, I'm really proud of that number this year. We're actually at 95 plus capacity right now, where more than 95% of our beds are full today, where someone's sleeping night. And I think that's a really great number too, that, we're not just letting people come. We're actively out looking for people who need help. And when a bed disappears, we're looking for the next person to be in that bed, right? So here's another couple of numbers I want us to talk about and some of the work we've been putting in. We had 10,900 counseling hours, which is an incredible number. And that's one-on-one counseling. That's not group counseling sessions. That's someone is sitting down with another individual and they're diving deep into their issues and trying to get to the root of their addiction. And another number that goes hand in hand with that is 139,000 education hours. So let's talk a little bit about our partner, Hope Inspired Ministries, and what education hours look like here at the Foundry.
Yeah. So education hours really are a lump category of multiple different types of education. It's everything from recovery resource education in the classroom, where you're talking about relapse plans. You're developing what we use is the Genesis process. It's a curriculum that we've been using for probably close to a dozen years now. And so some of those hours are recovery-specific training hours in a classroom environment. Then, as you mentioned, partnering with Hope Inspired Ministries, phenomenal partnership that we provide a lot of the physical hands-on workforce development training, but they come alongside us on our campus 5 days a week and walk groups or cohorts of men and women through a workforce training curriculum that's teaching everything about conflict resolution. I asked a guy one time, I said, "Tell me about your last job." He said, "It didn't end well." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I blew up on my boss, cussed him out, and quit." I said, "All right, so what would it have been like if you'd had some skills to be able to go in and say, you know what, I've got a disagreement with you. I think we need to talk this out." He said, "I'd probably still had that job." And it was a good job. So what we're doing is coming alongside them with Hope Inspired Ministries, doing the classroom component of workforce development. And so I call it what I call a live learning labs. What you're learning in a classroom one week, the way our schedule's designed, the very next week, you're going to get an opportunity to put that into practice and into action. The next week, you'll go back to the classroom. And then, so it rotates so that you have a live learning lab. For example, if you're working in the food services as your employment development here at the Foundry, you're learning about all these things about conflict resolution. Guess what? The next week, you're going to have an opportunity to put that into practice.
Yeah.
Why? Because sometimes people just don't get along. And so it's the neat dynamic. So when we say education hours, it's really the culmination of all of those things where we're learning.
Yeah.
And, I believe that we are lifelong learners, that we never stop learning and growing. And to be able to do that in a safe environment here at the Foundry is really what we try to provide during those education hours.
Yeah, and there's lots of great data that we keep up with because we care about being data oriented as an organization.
For sure.
So we've skipped over a bunch of numbers like the hundreds of thousands of hours people spend in employment readiness, the thousands and thousands of hours that volunteers have contributed, and down the line we keep up with tons of data. So. And all of it we did great with last year, but I got 2 more points of data that I think we should really celebrate this morning. The first one I want to talk about is graduates. So we had 129 graduates of the program this year. And to graduate the program isn't simple or easy. And it's not, you can't just show up and become a graduate.
Right.
This is something that's an active thing you got to do. To me, it's maybe the most impressive thing you can do in your life is to be stuck in addiction and then to graduate the Foundry's program. To talk about all the things that have to happen for someone to be a graduate here at the Foundry.
Yeah. So you mentioned it. It's more than just a number. It's about the men. It's about the women that are walking through the doors that said, I'm tired of being tired. I've got to have a change in my life. I've walked into a new environment. And it's kind of like the first day of school, right? Remember they had those butterflies back in elementary school. You didn't know what to expect. That same thing happens here. But they say, no matter what, I'm going to complete what I've started. Time and time again, I have men and women tell me, I've never finished anything. I've never graduated from anything in my life until I came to the Foundry. Well, that's a marker in someone's life of success, right? And so in order to graduate the Foundry, it is not a time-based program. It's a progress-based program. So just like you would have in a job, you would have an annual review. There are about 4 of those annual reviews. Actually, I guess they're not annual reviews, but 4 points of review for every individual that comes to the Foundry. And the way I describe it, it's like everybody gets a 50-gallon drum with their name on it. And at each of those points of review, we're, as a staff, looking into that drum to see if it's increasing, right? We don't expect you to be full in that very first one. But we do expect you to have grown and developed and made some progress in your life and spiritual ways and workforce development ways through your counseling relationships. Have you settled some issues, right, in your life? And so in order to get to that point of graduation, that barrel has to be full. And again, it's not time-based, so it takes a little bit longer than it does for others. But that's the beauty of being able to work with individuals on a one-on-one basis, right? You can personalize their journey of recovery. And so graduation is a culmination of a lot of different moving parts. The classroom, the counseling, the employment readiness, all of those people that are pouring into you, raising that level, raising that standard. And then there's a back end piece, right, before graduation. So what we would call non-residential. So those last 3 months where we're pairing you with a one-on-one mentor. Some people might call that a sponsor. Someone in life that is investing in you to say, we're going to help you get across the finish line. And so that whole journey is 9 months. And so I believe there's something special about the gestation period of humans in 9-month windows, right? And so it's like I'm being born again. I have a new life I mean, you can see the imagery of that being a 9-month cycle here at the Foundry as well, where they're walking out the door very differently than how they walked in the door. And again, it's all about, what was 127?
129.
129. Yeah. It's not about a number for us here at the Foundry, even though we obviously going to celebrate that. It's about there are 129 people in 2023 that are moms again, that are have a healthy relationship with their spouse again, that are parents, that are sons and daughters, whose lives are being restored through the power of the Holy Spirit while they're here at the Foundry. They're church attendees again, right? I tell people in our chapel services all the time, some of the greatest future Sunday school teachers are sitting in this room. Some of the greatest small group leaders that the Christian world will ever know are sitting in this room. So we know they're going back. And that to me, that's what 129 looks like. It's a number of men and women that literally are going back across this community, but across the state, across the Southeast, ultimately across the country, that are going back into a life very differently than they were when they walked in the door.
Yeah, and you can imagine the destructive effects that losing one person in a family can have, and how it leaves this gaping hole, and especially when they die young. Now, think about the opposite, when one person is kind of brought back to the family as a live, active member. Now, that's happened 129 times last year at the Foundry, where 129 people were restored and brought back to their families, and it was a healing process for a community, right? So, I mean, just an incredible number, and really proud of it, really proud of the graduates who managed to make it to the end. And a lot of what makes what you're saying work is our philosophy is that we don't do recovery for the graduate or for the participant. We tell them recovery is an active process that you must engage with.
That's right.
And we're here ready to engage you in this process, but you have to take your steps, right? And that's why this process of looking at their journey and having these milestones that we look at and taking an approach where we're saying you get to come to the next phase of the program once we feel like you're ready. And if you're not engaging with the program, then you're probably not ready for that next phase, right? It's 129 graduates. Now, probably the number that as Christians we're most proud of during all of this. And we had 111 water baptized this last year. And we haven't talked about that number a whole lot. We're starting to talk about it more because we're just so proud of it. And I mean, what does 111 baptized participants mean to you?
So to me, we asked ourselves a dozen years ago, what is more important? Getting someone off of an addictive cycle of substance abuse or leading them to Christ? And we wrestled with that for a while. And then we realized they're not mutually exclusive, right? That they are connected together. So what we know is that in order to have hope for a future, it's not just about being clean. It's about being free. And true freedom only comes from Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. We are a faith-based organization. We're a ministry. We are Christ-centered in everything that we do. I had a guy ask me one time, he said, do I have to be a Christian in order to graduate? And I looked at him and I said, I really don't know what you're asking about that, through that question, if there's something behind it. But the short answer is no. But we're going to set the table in such a way that you're going to want to eat from that table. We're going to try to make it attractive. Why? Because we believe that new life in Christ is attractive. 111 people, and that's not everybody that gave their life to Christ last year, but that's the 111 that said, I want to make sure everybody knows that I'm not who I used to be, that I have surrendered my life to Christ. And so you asked the question, what does that mean to me? I tell you what that means to me. One day, there are going to be 111 people from 2023 from Bessemer, Alabama, and Coleman, Alabama, at the Foundry Farm that said, you know what? I've given my life to Jesus, and I'm spending eternity with Him because of that decision I made. That means a whole lot.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't even think we can truly fathom what that means today, right?
Yeah.
We just know that that's a visual of an outside visual of what's happened on the inside of 111 men and women that walked through our doors this last year. Yeah. And so we're going to celebrate that number like no other number, right? We can feed people, we can clothe people, but unless we give them Jesus Christ, we labor in vain. So that's a big number for us. We're excited about it.
So we've covered body, soul, and mind in this one, all three things. We've had all the meals served and the nights of shelter to take care of people physically. We have 100,000 education hours, 10,000 counseling hours, but we also do the spiritual enrichment and we take care of their soul, and 111 people that led them to be baptized last year. So if you're proud of those numbers, I'd love for you to leave a comment down below and let us know what you thought of our 2023. We're so excited about 2024. Before we end the podcast, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month for the Lost and Foundry Show. Thanks for joining us.